Hey everybody, thanks for clicking on the video. My name is Ramon, and in this video I'm going to tell you 8 reasons why you're not catching fish and how to fix them. Now these are all mistakes that I've made as I've started learning how to fish and learning how to catch different species of fish. So I'm making this video to help people who are just starting out, who may not know where to start, or have been trying to catch fish for a long time and are just struggling and don't know why they're not catching fish. So the first reason you're not catching fish is you might be fishing waters where there are no fish. And I'm not saying there's absolutely zero fish, but the species that you're targeting might not be in that water. There is a little pond not too far from me that holds a lot of fish. It holds catfish, it holds bluegill, it holds green sunfish, but it does not hold bass. So if you're going there and you're going to try and catch some bass, guess what? You're going to get skunked. So that's kind of where getting to know your water, getting to know the species that is in that body of water becomes very beneficial. First, you got to make sure, the fish that you are looking for are there. Now I know in most bodies of water there are largemouth bass, but if you're targeting crappie and there's no crappie in that water, you're not going to catch crappie. That's just kind of how it goes. So do the research, spend some time on the water, ask people around that, hey, have you fished this body of water? What have you catch there? I'm trying to catch this. Where do you recommend I go? That's how you fix that. If there are no fish in that water, find a body of water with the fish that you want to catch. So the second reason you might not be catching fish is there might be fish in that water, but you just can't find them. Now that was something I struggled with quite a bit when I first started. I was going to bodies of water and I just could not find where they were because I didn't know what to look for. The past year I spent trying to understand where fish would be, how to find them, doing tons of research on figuring out what kinds of structure certain fish like, where most fish like to hang out. And what I like to focus on is things like shade, overhangs, structure, grassy areas. If I have a rocky bottom, I look for points, things like that. If I know there's a deeper part of the pond or a body of water that I'm fishing, I'll focus on those areas. And eventually, as you start to fish more and put more time in, you start to learn, okay, fish like to congregate in these areas. Oh, there's some branches that hang over this body of water and leaves and bugs tend to drop in there, and then you see a blow up. Go ahead and toss a lure over there. The other thing that helps me find fish is ultralight fishing. So when I go to a new body of water, I actually don't take any of my bass rods or any of my heavier rods. I just take an ultralight rod with a very small jig, and I start casting that thing around in likely areas where I think fish will be sitting at, and I will cast it in there. And the thing about ultralight lures is they'll catch anything. They'll catch bluegill, they'll catch sunfish, they'll catch catfish, they'll catch bass, and you can really get into a good amount of fish, and it'll kind of give you an idea of what type of fish are in that body of water. The other thing that you can do is get yourself a fish finder that you can cast. They make the deeper chirp. They have different price points, but you can get yourself a deeper, cast that sucker out, and reel it in. Now you do need a heavy rod for those because they do kind of weigh a bit, but if you cast one out and start mapping that water, you start to learn the structure that's in that water. You start to learn all the contours, the points, things like that, and get a lot of information that you didn't have beforehand. Depth, temperature, things like that. That'll all help you find fish. If you're having a hard time finding fish, start doing some research. Like I said, ask around, fish it more, fish smaller lures. That way you can find some activity, you can find where the fish are and still have a good time, and you're not getting skunked, and you're at least coming home with some information for the next time you go out to that body of water. The third reason you're not catching fish, you're fishing heavily pressured waters. And what I mean by pressured waters is you go fishing and you're probably going to bump into 2 to 3 other people fishing that one little area that you're in. And that's common, not everyone has access to private property that they can fish. So when you're starting out, you're probably just going to hit a lot of public water. And these fish are used to seeing the same lures over and over again. What I like to do is I throw lures that not everyone is doing. One of my favorite lures to catch fish on is the mule fishing donkey tail junior and the horsefly. They're really small lures. They have unique action, and anything wants to eat them. Now number 4, there sometimes isn't a fix for this one, but you might be fishing during the wrong time of the day. Depending on your season, the temperature has a lot to do with whether fish are going to bite or not. If you're in the summer and you're fishing in the middle of the day, the hottest part of the day, you're going to have a difficult time catching fish. And like I said, you might not be able to do anything about this. Middle of the day might be the only time you can go out and fish. It's just going to be something that you're going to have to deal with. You're going to have to go with the expectation of, okay, middle of the day, fish might not be biting that well, so let me have my best opportunity to get them to bite. Let me make sure I stack the cards in my favor. So go out with live bait. You're more likely to catch a fish on some live bait than you are on a soft plastic in the middle of the day. And that's not saying it's not impossible. I've seen some crazy things happen. Someone getting a topwater bite in the middle of the day, someone catching them on a frog in the middle of the day. But if you have a limited amount of time and you want to make sure you come home with a fish catch, try some live bait, especially if you know the time of day that you're fishing isn't ideal. Do the best that you can do to make sure that you catch your fish. This other reason, again, not much we can do about it, but you might be fishing in a difficult season. Summertime, super hard to catch fish like bass. Super hard to catch fish that prefer colder waters. In the wintertime, bass become lethargic. That's really good for trout fishing. As soon as that colder weather starts to set in, that's the ideal weather for trout fishing. And the way you fix that is you just make sure that you're aware of the season that you're fishing in, that you have an expectation. Now, number 6, you're fishing the wrong lures. You could be throwing a moving bait when you need to slow things down and throw a finesse bait, throw a Ned rig instead of crankbait. You could be throwing a chatterbait and all they're doing is hitting Texas rig worms. But you won't know without getting that initial knowledge and switching things up. One of the worst things you can do is be stuck on a lure and not change it out, unless you're specifically trying to learn to throw that technique. I've been guilty of this tons of times. I go out, tie a lure on, and I'm like, I'm gonna catch one on this lure, and I do not change the lure, and I end up not catching a fish. I did that a ton when I first started out. Now, if I don't catch something within a certain amount of time and I know there's fish in that area, I switch it up. Okay, they're not biting a chatterbait today, let's throw a Texas rig, let's throw a wacky rig, let's throw a crankbait, a lipless, let's switch things up. I'll start junk fishing, I'll start throwing everything I can, I'll size down, I'll size up, I'll change the color, and I'll change the way I rig a certain soft plastic, I'll change the retrieve on it. I'll just change things up until I get a bite and start to get a pattern down. Once I get a pattern down, then I can start, experimenting a little bit. And I'll make note of that. I'll start looking at what I did the previous year in that area or in similar conditions, and I'll have an expectation for next time I come. Oh, around this time they were biting on this. Let's start with that one this time instead of guessing. A lot of times you get stuck on that one lure and you don't want to change it. You don't want to spend time retying. Take the time to tie on something else, and you might actually catch a fish. So talking about lures, number 7. You might be throwing the right lure, but you just might not be fishing it right. And again, guilty for this one as well. I tie something on and I throw it out there and I don't necessarily know how to fish it. This is kind of where doing a lot of research beforehand, watching videos on YouTube, reading some magazines, some blog posts, what have you, however you get your information, get that information down, get a good understanding of how to fish a particular type of lure. It will help you be more successful in the long term. Because if you're out there throwing a Carolina rig and you're not fishing it properly, you're probably not going to get a bite. If you're throwing a wacky rig and you're fishing it too fast, you're probably not going to get a bite. Your chances of getting a bite with a particular type of lure really depends on how well you can fish that lure. Now, there are some lures that are super easy to fish. A crankbait, super easy to fish. Spinnerbait, super easy to fish. There's a lot of lures that you just toss out there and you retrieve it and you can twitch it, and it's super easy because you get feedback. There are some lures that you're not sure if you're fishing it right. That's where you start to ask for help. Hey, this is what I've been doing, or hey, can you teach me how to fish that? Things like that can help you and go a long way in learning how to fish a good lure. Number 8 is you go to a spot and you stay in that same spot. Now, what I mean by that is you go to one body of water and you stay at that body of water. Or worse, you stay at that body of water and you stay in the same spot the whole time you're there. Now, I understand sometimes you only have an hour. A lot of times I only have 1 hour a week to go out and fish, so I have to be very specific about where I'm going. If I only have enough time to hit one body of water, I'm going to work every single area that I can. So I'm moving around. I'm not spending more than, 10 to 15 minutes fishing one area if I know there are fish there. Like I said, switching up lures, switching up colors, moving position is also just as important as changing out your lures, because they might not be on the bank you're at, but if you switch sides and you try from another angle, you might hit them from a different angle that they're not used to being casted out to, and that may cause them to bite. You can tell when a particular part of a pond or a lake is heavily fished because the access is a lot easier. There's less grass and brush, and it's very easy to get to, and it's very easy to cast, and it's one of those like, oh, this looks like a great spot to fish from the bank. It's easy to stand, it's easy to put your stuff down. You don't have to deal with brush everywhere. You don't have to deal with high grass or overhangs or things like that you can get snagged on. Now, while that is super easy to cast from and very ideal, it also means that everybody else is fishing from there. So, move around, get to those hard to reach areas, go for a hike, go a little bit further along the bank, go to those areas that are difficult to get to, because that's usually where the fish will be sitting, because everyone else hits them from that other side. So go around, get to those areas that are hard to reach, cast from there, and you're probably going to be more successful. These are all the issues that I kind of combated with when I first started fishing. I spent a lot of time making a ton of mistakes. Hopefully me making those mistakes makes it so you don't have to. If you're just getting into bass fishing and you're looking for some very beginner friendly lures to learn, go ahead and click this video right here. Thank you guys for watching. I'll see you guys on the next one.